Vibe coding is not a replacement for traditional coding. The best use case for vibe coding or implementing vibe coding is via the ideation phase of software development. Welcome back. So what is the best use case for vibe coding? I think I've mentioned that a couple of times now, and that is for prototyping. So the best use case for vibe coding or implementing vibe coding is via the ideation phase of software development. And that ideation phase is where you prototype your idea, okay, or your ideas. Now, what is the role of prototyping in software development? Now, for some that do not know that, I think it's important that we say what the role is so you know where to implement it best. Okay? Now, prototyping is the process of building we call it POCs, a proof of concept, to validate the idea that you're after before investing in full-scale development. Okay, so prototyping is pretty much building or developing a proof of concept version of your app or your system or your software. Right. Now, that proof of concept is what demonstrates that that idea is feasible. And it also demonstrates the capabilities of your idea. Okay. Now, proof of concept is not MVP, because some people make that mistake. Building a most viable product, right, is actually you already invested in software development. Building a proof of concept is not that. It's your pre-development stage. Okay? So that's what prototyping is. And the focus is not on writing production-ready code, which is why vibe coding is good at this stage. You are not writing production-ready code. So it's for you to create something quite fast, or create something that works fast, or create something rapidly, right? So that you can demonstrate to others, and then a decision can be made to invest in building that product. So it allows for a risk-free exploration and testing of your concepts and features. Again, remember I said proof of concept is where you're checking the feasibility of your idea. Is it feasible? You get. So it's a risk-free exploration and testing of your concept and ideas. So that's what prototyping is. So how prototyping starts, right? Now, like I said, when I was building Carbon AI, it started with a prototype. Okay. Every real product, okay, or idea every real product, I would say, begins with an idea. Every idea begins with a vision or a need to solve a problem. Now, but every real product begins as an idea. Sometimes it's a sketch, it's a note, it's a thought, but it's an idea that we all jot down. Now, the early prototyping phase is about bringing these ideas to life without the pressure of perfecting the idea in itself. Okay? No, so as I shared, I had an article in Tech Economy earlier this year. I'll put the link in below somewhere. And in that article, I talked about imagination driving artificial intelligence, right? So I'm saying that it's human imagination that drives what we're building with artificial intelligence. And in there, I argue that building an artificial intelligence tool is same thing as building a software like we've always done in the past, but now we're using AI techniques. Now, my aim in that article is to say imagination drives engineering, and prototyping is where this imagination takes shape in code, basically. Okay, so your imagination takes shape in code during prototyping. So if you see it that way, that's how prototyping starts. Okay, now there are a lot of AI tools out there that enable vibe coding. Again, the best use of vibe coding is for prototyping. We now understand what prototyping is, how to use it, and how it starts basically, and what the aim of prototyping is. Now, vibe coding is very useful for prototyping. It's most useful for prototyping. It has increased my productivity in a high. I've not measured it, but it's made me faster at going from ideation to software development. Okay, I know that for a fact. I actually should take time to measure it and quantify it in some percentage, but vibe coding is actually a productive tool, I would say, using LLM for the vibe coding to bring my ideas to life quite fast, or ideas that have been communicated to me by, say, investors or clients or directors to life quite fast. Now, there are AI tools that enable vibe coding. So the whole idea of vibe coding, like I said, prototyping has been before vibe coding came. Okay, now vibe coding is the intersection between AI, which is artificial intelligence, and software development. Now, what are the AI tools that enable vibe coding? And there's a number of them. So I'm gonna speak on a few. So there is GitHub Copilot, which I use a lot. And what GitHub Copilot does is it integrates with your development environment, right? Your IDE, and it provides code suggestions. It auto completes your functions. It also even builds unit tests for you now. You get, so they keep improving the functionalities around Copilot, and it speeds up your coding task because they're using GitHub Copilot. You can just type. Sometimes I just copy and paste the description from the software required document into Copilot of the in my Visual Studio Code, and it then writes the function for me. Okay, so GitHub Copilot is quite a good vibe coding tool that you could use. ChatGPT, I mentioned that. Claude and others, it's quite good. And that with those ones, it allows a more conversational coding style. Now, with GitHub Copilot, you're probably a developer who's got an idea from a non-developer and you're trying to put it to life. Now, with ChatGPT and the likes of Claude and all of that, this brings in conversational coding, where a non-developer can just type in words like, "This is my idea. Can you write a code for me that will perform this function?" So you describe your problem and you get working with code, and you explain to it what you want. And even when you get errors, right, because you copy the code, paste it in an IDE to see if it works. Even when you get an error, all you have to do is copy the entire error that you've gotten from the code and paste it into Claude or ChatGPT or the like, and it will kind of guide you on correcting your code as well. Okay, so ChatGPT, Claude, and others are good. There are others like Windsurf, Codium, Gemini, Llama, all the likes are all AI driven code assistant tools that you can use. Now, what do these tools enable? They enable Well, they do enable the democratization of coding, making it possible for developers and non-developers to rapidly build prototypes, and just makes building prototypes accessible to more people. So that is the tools that do power vibe coding. Now, I think this is a good segue now that we understand. So just to give us a recap, we now know what vibe coding is, how it started, what the debate around it is, what the most appropriate use case is, which is through prototyping, right? And the tools that can help you do vibe coding and how they help you. Now we quickly go into the strengths of vibe coding, because with everything there's always the strengths and limitations, so I like to point that out. And because once you know the strengths and the limitation of something, you are able to use it most appropriately. Okay, so what are the strengths of vibe coding? One is speed. Okay, it brings your ideas to life in hours. Before, it would take weeks. I remember 2 years ago when I was prototyping Carbon AI. If you're interested in my version of Carbon AI, it's carbonai.eco. It's at a customizable white label stage at the minute. At some point, we're going to make Carbon AI into a more general use. But let me not digress. That's my tool, is my baby, so it's all I think about at the minute. So I've mentioned it quite a lot at the minute. But let's go back to vibe coding quickly. Now, when I was prototyping Carbon AI, it was pre-vibe coding, and LLMs were not good at even normal natural language tasks at the time, right? I think GPT was still on 3.5 or lesser. I can't remember fully now. Now, it took me some days, I won't say weeks, it took me some days to get to just building a small prototype on a small data set of what Carbon AI can look like. However, building prototypes, from experience in my 2.5 decades of doing this, it can take weeks. It can take weeks to build a prototype. Right now, what vibe coding does is brings in the speed, right? So you can bring your idea to life in hours rather than weeks. Now, another strength is creativity. Now, when you are building prototypes, sometimes because you're conscious of the amount of time you're spending on the prototype stage alone, it can stifle your creativity to limit what you're prototyping, right? Now, with vibe coding, you can experiment with as many concepts as possible because of the speed that it gives you in building it in the first place. Okay, so creativity is enhanced, so you can experiment with concepts and features without constraints. Another strength of vibe coding is accessibility. Now, non-developers and cross-functional teams can participate in contributing to code. At the minute, I have an engineering team and I have a data science team. And in the past, the data science team would have to do a lot of documentation of the idea that they prototyped for the engineering to build around that data. Now they can also just give me some .py file, which is the code of what they've done, and it makes it faster for the engineering team to implement. So they do not have to translate their ideas into words and then pass it to the engineering team, and the engineering team keeps checking back, is my understanding correct? And there are multiple meetings back and forth. With the prototype vibe coded code, the engineering team gets the idea and then they can productionize the prototype. Okay, so it makes it possible for cross-functional teams to participate in building and validating the idea. So that's the strength. So we go to the limitation. Now, the limitation of vibe coding is maintainability. I've explained that earlier. AI generated code is hard to maintain even for the AI tool. Okay, so AI generated code, and the reason for that is because AI generated code lacks structure. Okay, and it also lacks documentation, and it also lacks long-term supportability because it's rapid development, isn't it? So it's generated it for you very fast. The focus is not on structure, so it's just giving you something. And to be able to maintain such code as is a nightmare. Okay, so please, do not bring AI generated code into production. Another thing is security. All right, now your AI is more bothered about just generating the code. Sometimes I think when I'm prompting the AI tool, I also try and say, look, suggest security or suggest solutions that put security concerns in the forefront. What the AI tool does for me is it generates the code and then suggests the security measures I could take. Which is also good, you get, but it's not building it within that code, okay? Because rapidly generated code introduces vulnerability. And introduction of vulnerability brings about technical debts or other compliance issues as well. All right, so security is a big limitation. Another key one is lack of deep context. Again, the memory of LLMs are not the best. All right, the memory is within the chat window that you're in. I know they are all able to hold up to 1 million contexts now, a token context now, but memory is still key. All right, because LLMs don't have intrinsic knowledge. Okay, now they do not have deep knowledge or intrinsic knowledge of what your business logic or technical requirements really are, because what you're doing is giving it to them. You cannot give a full projects or product specification requirement document to an LLM and then it builds a tool for you. Everyone has tried that. I've seen some developers online try that. It always comes back with rubbish. The best way to use these AI tools is to give it the solution. You break it down, because it's all by prompting, isn't it? So you have to break it down function by function. So it's good at the aspects of the code is building for you now, but not in the overall view of what your project is. So because it lacks that deep context, it's a big limitation for converting your vibe coded code into production. Okay, and lastly, I would say outdated libraries. Most of these LLMs, although yes, a lot of them are plugged to the web, but they are still not aware of the recent libraries out there. So most of the time, because I remember it gave me a code for some analytics I was doing, and when I put in my Jupyter notebook, the libraries did not conform with the libraries I already have, and I didn't want to import old libraries. So I went back to the LLM to say, well, these are the new libraries, and it still couldn't help me in the end. Okay, so the LLM is only aware of outdated libraries, so that's a limitation. Now, the guidelines for vibe coding. Use vibe coding for prototyping demos. Or I would say use vibe coding for prototyping, for demos, and proof of concept type work. That's what you should use it for. All right. Avoid using vibe coded output as final production code for the many reasons I've explained. Please. And also, at the end of the day, your vibe coded code should be passed to an experienced software engineer to transition your prototype into a secure and maintainable product. Okay? So those are the guidelines for vibe coding. So in conclusion, in conclusion, the recommended workflow for implementing vibe coding is ideation. You start by defining the problem and brainstorming your solution. No code required yet. So write your idea out. Stage 2. Once you've gone through that ideation of you writing out your idea, you then start vibe coding, or aka prototyping, or vibe prototyping. Right? So you're leveraging AI tools to build a working model, a proof of concept of your idea rapidly, and then you're testing what the feasibilities are as well. And then the next stage of that workflow is transition your prototype, right, to experienced engineers to implement. So once your concept is validated, shift to traditional development focus or traditional engineering on architecture, testing, documentation, and production readiness. Okay, so you transition to actual good software engineering practices from your prototype. So that is the ideal workflow that I will recommend. Of course, if you have others, let me know below, and then we can pick on that as well. So in concluding, this is the final concluding now. I would say vibe coding is valuable. Okay, it's valuable. It is a valuable approach for transforming your ideas into working solutions quickly, right? It accelerates innovation and increases your productivity within the ideation phase. Now, vibe coding is not a replacement for traditional coding. All right, it is not a replacement for traditional software engineering, but it is a complementary tool for the early phases of software or product development. I should have water by my side. My throat is dry. So I'll repeat that again. Vibe coding is not a replacement for traditional software development. It complements, or it is a complementary tool for the early stages of product development. Finally, use vibe coding to unlock your creativity. All right? Go free. Like the word says, vibe on with your ideas in code. Okay? Once you've done that, then you can build robust solutions for real world deployment, I would say. So allow your creativity to go free, right, while you're coding. Code for all the possible features that your ideas, within your ideas that you want to have. Validate quickly, just be more creative, because what vibe coding does is it allows us to be more creative with our ideas. And once you're able to bring your idea to life and you've validated your concept, then pass it for actual product deployment or real world product deployment process, so we can convert your creative ideas into real world solutions. Okay, so that is it on vibe coding. Are you team vibe or team traditional? Okay, I would say both are complementary. Vibe coding is not replacing developers. All right, but vibe coding is used by both developers and non-developers. Now, if you want to be a proper engineer, do not start your career with just vibe coding. Go and understand proper software engineering practices, I beg of you. Okay, there are too many bad code examples I see online. There's a lady I watch on YouTube that gives examples of how I would say Gen Z developers would put vibe code into production code. And there was an example where there was a try and a catch, and in the catch, the catch code said refer back to LLM in comments, basically refer back to LLM for more ideas or something like that. So again, if you want to actually be a software engineer, do not start off with vibe coding. Start learning software engineering properly, I beg of you. All right. So I would say, again, this is our community. Can you comment below what has been your experience with AI assisted prototyping called vibe coding? Let's discuss, how do you see the role of AI evolving to how do you see the role of AI evolving in the software development lifecycle? Right? At the beginning, AI now, I would say, is very productive in the beginning phase of software development. Do you think it can be more productive in the ending phase, for example, with automation testing, debugging, and stuff like that? Let me have your comments. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.